So my overarching goal with anybody who is struggling with trans identity or even part of the LGBT community is never to try and transform somebody into what Genesis 1 says that they are, or form them into Christian morality.
All right, welcome to FreeThinking Ministries, a theological dust-up that we're going to have today. It is Pride Month, and I am your host, Josh Klein, and Tim Stratton, Dr. Tim Stratton,
hey guys.
Venerable Dr. Tim Stratton is with us today. Yeah, I don't even know if I used that word correctly, but we're gonna go with it. So it is Pride Month. Did you know this, Tim?
Well, I did. I mean, I just had
kind of hard not to know it.
Right. I mean, Look, my birthday was yesterday, so was my wife's birthday, and then we've also got our anniversary this month. So we used to say this was Tim and Tia month, but then, we got, that we were kind of taken over by the rainbow flag, and but I'll tell you this: today is June 14th, as we're recording this, and it's American Flag Day. So we've got the American Flag Day in the middle of the Rainbow Flag Month.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, not even the rainbow flag anymore. It's
right.
The pride flag's completely different. It's not just the rainbow flag.
Yeah, there's all kinds of colors in there.
Yeah. So the question, as always, as Christians, is how do we love people? How do we tell the truth? And it can be extremely difficult, especially during the month of June, because there's a lot of emotions. I've said before, and I recently published an article on our website that the new cultural Christianity is this progressive version of Christianity that affirms all things. And so we are called unloving if we don't participate in the sacrifice to the pagan god of pride and of spiritual pride. So we thought it would make sense to talk about some of the issues. Specifically, we're going to zero in on transgenderism because that's been in the news a lot. Even just lately in this week, and what it means as Christians. How do we discern the truth with transgenderism, and how do we articulate that to the world? And before we get started, there's this press release that happened just earlier this week. I'm going to read an excerpt about it. We're probably going to talk more about this, but I want to read an excerpt. Dr. Jill Simmons is a pediatrician and executive director at AC PEDS, which is American Pediatricians, says it is time that these American medical institutions follow the science and the lead of our European professional colleagues and cease to promote protocols that harm children, including the promotion of social affirmation, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries for children and adolescents who experience distress over their biological sex. What a powerful statement. And we are going to talk more about that. We are going to talk more about what it means to, as Christians, enter into the foray of this conversation, because it can be very, very touchy. And we have a special guest with us that's going to help us lead in that conversation.
Yeah, Josh, you and I made a friend at last year's Evangelical Philosophical Society meeting, and I was moderating a debate on the Trinity between William Lane Craig and Dale Tuggy and some others. And a young woman asked a brilliant question during that, and I ran into her at the bookstore later that day, and we started talking and realized, wow, she has something to say about this transgender stuff that we're dealing with today. And so, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Alycia Wood to the FreeThinking show. Here she is.
Hi, Alycia.
Hi, guys. So happy to be with you. And thanks, Tim. I've forgotten that is how we met. You reminded me of that story. And that was a really cool breakout session. So
wasn't that cool?
Yeah. That was a good one. Yeah.
Yes. I was so nervous with the in that debate, especially, because William Lane Craig is kind of my hero, but I also didn't want to come across as too partial and giving him the benefits, right, as the moderator. So I was really nervous about that, but I had a lot of fun in the process. But there was many great questions, and you asked one of them, and so yeah, thanks for taking part in that conversation.
Yeah, and I don't envy the fact that you were moderating. I'm glad you were moderating and not me, because I would have felt all of those things as well, especially when you got a room full of theologians on the
Oh, right.
Trinity.
Yeah.
It's like, goodness.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
well, Alycia, tell us. Oh, go ahead, Josh.
I was just saying, we're not here to talk about the Trinity today, although we would love to. That'll play a role in how we discern this. But yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah,
So
Alycia, tell us about it yourself.
Sure. So a little about me. Well, what is good to know? No, I come from Rochester, New York, and just grew up right on the Canada border there. Grew up doing sports and all that kind of fun stuff. So as we're talking about this topic of transgender, I was the quintessential, or I don't know what the word is, but the stereotypical, that's what I'm looking for. That's their stereotypical masculine girl. I was all tomboy. We just call them tomboys then. It was just simple.
Yeah.
That's it. You're just a tomboy. And it was like, whatever. Nobody cared. So that was me. I was into sports, and I was the girl that the guys picked on the dodgeball team, only because I could catch. I could catch their balls. They could throw them so fast. Yeah. But then I would literally catch them and throw it to them so they could throw it, because I did not have their arms. Like, they had these amazing arms.
So you were a receiver, not a quarterback.
Yes, that was yes, and I would love to have played football, and I would have been a receiver all day. Yes, so did that. Actually, ended up playing hockey, softball, those kind of things. Yeah, I was an ice hockey player for 20 some odd years, and and then journeyed kind of on through life, and Lord beckoned me into the apologetics type realm. I fought him, told him it was a stupid idea, but here I am, nearly 11 years later, and it turns out he was right. Surprise. Like, it's such a natural fit for me. And it's just the way I think about life. And so I studied criminal justice and sociology in my undergrad, which basically means I use a lot of crime scene analogies, because it makes sense when you're talking about crime scenes and evidence and these kind of things. And also that I'm a people watcher. That's what you get when you get sociologists. We just watch people and observe. Yeah. And then got my master's in social justice before it became a fad. Now it's a fad, but then it was like nobody was doing that. I just wanted to work in the developing world, and helping like using solar to help clean water, and more like that kind of thing, food and schools and that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of a roundabout way of saying. But then I landed in apologetics, and it's been a race going forward ever since.
Wow, that's awesome. So, your website is apologeticsinc.org. Is that right?
Yeah. It's apologetics.org. I would love to say it was solely my website, because that is like a killer URL. But no, it's I work with a group of people. Apologetics Inc. is the name of our organization. I work with some wonderful people, Megan Allman, Matthew Middleberg, and Mike Sherrard, as well as some other people. And so we were formerly the C.S. Lewis Society, but as you know, there's a lot of those. And the apologetics.org URL they had grabbed back in like the 90s or early 2000s, something like that.
Wow.
And so it was C.S. Lewis Society, but our website was apologetics.org. And so they've been making a massive transition in the last several years, just because just transitioning from what it was to kind of where we're going in the future. And so that's what we're doing. Dr. Tom was the one who founded it, and the C.S. Lewis Society, Tom Woodward, and founded the C.S. Lewis Society in Tampa there. And so we've moved on to kind of, what does the next phase look like? And so Apologetics Inc. aligns really great with apologetics.org.
Nice. Well, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we've got some questions for you, and like to kind of work through some of those, and feel free if you have other things you want to say. We don't have to stick to these questions, but the first one that I want to reference, or that I want to ask you, is something about what Josh referenced about is it the American pediatricians? Is that?
Yeah. It's Doctors Protecting Children. It's the American Pediatrician Society, or something like that. Yeah, American College of Pediatricians. That's what it is. Yeah.
So, Alycia, we sent you this document before you came on, and I think you had a chance to look at it. What are your thoughts? What do you think of the statement that they offered, I think, just a few days ago?
Yeah, so I think one of the initial things that I think of is I'm actually really surprised that this came out. I've been telling people for a while that the way that things generally work culturally is, maybe like places like Denmark, Sweden, these guys are kind of ahead of the curve when it comes to some of the new social things, makes its way to England, makes its way to Canada, and then makes its way to the US, kind of a thing, kind of starts there and kind of makes its way. So once again, the reverse of that, when things change, it's Denmark and Sweden and those kind of countries, then the UK, and then it should be Canada and the US. But this time, I haven't seen and I may have missed it, but I just haven't seen anything from Canada on this, like on this level that these American doctors have done. And that is fascinating to me. So one of the initial things I thought it was, wow, it skipped Canada this time. And Canada's almost seemed like they keep digging their heels in deeper into this issue, no matter what. So I think that was my initial thing is, wow, I wasn't expecting it. I knew the tide in America has been changing. I knew that while I've been speaking on this topic for over a year or so, or whatever it's been, that I wasn't going to be speaking on it 5 years into the future. And I knew that the tide was really turning culturally because of the fact that, so many, and I let people know when I talk about this is, so often people say like, it's these Christians or it's these conservatives or it's these Republicans that, that are against the trans community. And that's not the truth, actually. This issue is so unique, I think, because it's actually one of the times where the Christian community and so much of the culture, obviously not all of it, but actually are in sync. You've got Richard Dawkins, the world's most popular atheist, speaking against transgenderism. It's like, he's like, it's biology, people. What's wrong with you?
That's right.
Yeah. And even people like Bill Maher. I mean, Bill Maher has been pretty vocal. Yeah.
Exactly. So when I see this coming out, I'm like, okay, again, this is now we got medical community people, which they've been doing for a while. So I think that was my initial thing, was just to kind of see, hey, we've got actually an official statement, which I think is a really big deal. I think the second thing, and I think I kind of felt this way a little bit with the WPATH files and the Cass report, is there's what is written in that document isn't anything particularly new, in the sense of these are the things that people have been saying for a while, whether it's me as an apologist that's been saying it, whether it's the detransitioners that have been saying, hold on, I'm not happier, I'm regretting what I've done, people need to listen to us, whether it's, certain psychiatrists that have been saying, a few doctors that have been saying. So I feel like people have been saying these things for a while, but it wasn't until WPATH file came out that people realized, oh, these guys weren't just talking. Like, actually, WPATH and crew really didn't have science-backed evidence for what they were telling us to do.
That's good. What do you think do you think this statement will have an impact in some of the medical transition communities? It's great to have a statement, but what do you think there's going to be an impact on it if you were to put on your prediction glasses?
That's a great question. I hadn't thought about that. You know what? I would say yes, and this is why. Because there have been doctors, there have been people from the gay community. There's actually a website called Gays Against Groomers, right? And so people from the LGBT, lesbian, gay, bi community have been standing up and speaking out and saying, this is wrong here. Something is wrong here. We are not part of the T anymore. Like there's almost like they want to separate because they're saying this T is just too much right now. So you've had some doctors speak up. You've had some people from the LGBT community speak up. You've had certain therapists speak up. But the problem is that there is still a lot of people that are, I don't want to say undercover, but they're like working in the professions, but they're scared to speak up. And I think one of the things that helps people to actually come forth boldly and take a stand on something is knowing that they're not alone. And so I think what this particular document will do is it will provide an avenue for people that are affiliated with some of the organizations that they mentioned in the video that they represent. It'll allow them to say, hey, you think this too? Because they're scared. Psychologists have been scared to speak up as well. And really, we blame a lot of the medical community, but we really need to hold the psychological and psychiatry, hold that whole crew accountable, because they're the ones sending them to the doctors. They're the first step. And they send them to the doctors after one, maybe two visits. Yeah. So I think this will actually give people the opportunity to say, okay, I'm not alone. and be able to step forward and join with people and form a coalition. So I think it will be helpful in that way.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, that when you talk about the psychological community or psychiatric community, it's interesting the twist that's kind of taken, because it used to be we'll help you think through your problems, and now it's we'll listen and then we'll affirm what you think is the best mode of dealing with your issues, and that's just not therapy. That's not actually counseling. It's something completely different. Why? Yeah. Well, why would you pay to go to a doctor just to affirm? Like, you go to a doctor, you're feeling sick, you go to a doctor, and all they do is say, "Well, yeah, do whatever you want," and you just pay them $100,000 to tell you that.
What do you? What sickness do you think you have?
Yeah, yeah. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. So we're thinking about transgenderism. We want to love people well, right? But we can't sacrifice the truth. Otherwise, love is not love. It turns into hate. Right. And so with that in mind, so I listened to some of the talks on YouTube. So I think Apologetics Inc. has a YouTube channel, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We'll plug that even at the end of this. We'll put it in the description. Follow this. So I went and listened to some of the things, and I learned some things. I've been talking about this for a little while as well. I don't think I'm as well versed in the science as you. I talk more about it from a theological perspective, from progressive Christianity, that sort of thing. So maybe we'll have a discussion on that.
Great, yeah.
But one of the things I heard you say, something like this isn't a direct quote, but it says, you said something like, since 2012, not a single study shows girls are as trans. Is that similar to what you said? If so, what does that mean?
Yeah. So that comes from I always tell people that the really key book on this topic is going to be Abigail Schreier's Irreversible Damage. And that is an excellent book. She did a fantastic job really just of exposing what was happening. We didn't know really until she put that book out, and then people were scared to publish the book because it was so like, oh my goodness. So it's one of the things that Abigail Schreier mentions is that before 2012, there was no scientific literature on girls ages 11 to 21 ever having developed gender dysphoria at all. So the idea of gender dysphoria isn't new. It was just usually male to female. So think Jazz Jennings. That's kind of your classic example that people know. Or even if you think of trans people from 20 years ago, they're usually men dressing like women. Right. So you see that kind of a thing. And that is generally how they saw it, is people, young boys, maybe anywhere between 2, 3, 4 years old, saying, I like wearing dresses. I feel like I'm a girl. I want to wear mommy's makeup. I want to be in mommy's heels. And so they start from that young age, like Jazz Jennings, and identifying as female, and then kind of go from there. But to have this, what we're seeing now is a massive shift where it's the young girls that are transitioning are, number one, greatly outnumbering the men that are transitioning, or the young boys that are transitioning. But number two, it's also not starting from 2, 3, 4 years old, like what we've seen with the young boys. Generally, it's starting from all of a sudden you're 12 and all of a sudden you come home and tell your parents you're a boy. And they're like, wait, what? Where did this come from?
Right.
And that's where they call this rapid onset gender dysphoria. Like, it's coming quickly onsets. It comes almost seems like out of nowhere for parents who are, by the way, are extremely liberal and extremely okay with the LGBTQ community and these kind of things. And so that's why that information from Abigail Schreier is so interesting, that the scientific literature before 2012 wasn't really talking about girls transitioning because it was just so rare.
Well, you bring up the how it's normally boys who have that. Okay, I mean, I can't believe I'm going to say this right now, but when I was like probably 4 years old or so, I mean, Wonder Woman was really popular back then on TV,
right?
And I would watch that. I get so excited, and then me and my sister and my cousins were like, "Hey, let's play superheroes," and I'm like, "I'll be Wonder Woman."
Yeah.
And my sister's like, I want to be Wonder Woman. I'm like, no, I'm going to be Wonder Woman. She's my little sister. So I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to. And then I'll never forget, my parents saying, "Hey, Tim, your sister is a girl and Wonder Woman is a girl. So you should let her be Wonder Woman. You should choose to be the Hulk or Spider-Man or somebody like that. And we don't get that today, right? Now my parents probably saved me from a lot of pain right there. Now imagine if they would have been affirming parents. So let's start dressing you as Wonder Woman. You bring up liberal parents and godly parents, and my parents were definitely on the right side of that one. I'm so thankful for them. But yeah, would you say it's kind of common to see that kind of thing in young boys? You kind of referenced that a little bit. So what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would give numbers in terms of commonality, but I think we also need to understand, just in the story you explained, it's just the innocence of a young child to just say, so I'm just going to play Wonder Woman. They're not thinking, hey, I want to switch my entire physical nature into something else. Like, they're just thinking, what's the big deal? It's almost like, and maybe I'm wrong here. And so if there's a psychologist watching and she's like, no, you're wrong, Alicia's wrong here, then, well, I'm giving you that caveat in the beginning. But I do recognize that there is something with young children where they don't see the world the same way adults do. And I see this with the topic of race. So I remember I was in Pennsylvania in a particular store, and there was this young little black boy with his mother, who was also black, right in front of me in the checkout aisle. And there is this, they're always trying to sell you everything, gum, candy, whatever it is. And there's this little picture frame. And inside the picture frame is a little stock photo, right? Of course. And the stock photo is of this little white boy. So this young black boy in front of me is looking at this picture frame, and he turns to his mom. He goes, "Mom, is that what I looked like when I was little?" And his mom chuckled, and I chuckled, right? And I think maybe his grandma was there or something. And his mom just said, "No, honey, that's not how you looked," But there was such an innocence to that, because they just see things differently when they're young. And I almost wonder if you're just, as a kid, you're just thinking, we're just playing pretend anyways. You're generally not Wonder Woman. You are playing pretend.
Yeah.
Right. Just like you play pretend as a dog, just like you play pretend as the big dragon that's going to eat you. Right.
Yeah.
So kids play pretend. It's Jonathan Haidt talks a lot about this, and this is really good and healthy. This idea of like imaginative play. And, kids pretending to be different things and taking on different characters and personalities, all that is fine. And I think what's happening is, just like when I was a kid, I was a tomboy. Nobody said, Alycia, you need to become a boy. It was just like, someone let her play sports and let her climb trees and let her fall off her bike because she thinks that's cool, So I think that there's a sense in which we need to leave room for kids to be part of imaginative play and pretending to be different things, and not blow it up into something much bigger than what it actually is. So I think you've kind of almost answered the question a little bit in the sense of, to you, it's so innocent. Like, you're just like, I just want to play Wonder Woman because I think she's cool.
Yeah.
For little boys to think men and women are cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think your parents, I understand their caution as well. That's a good explanation, though. Well, this is teaching, right?
Yeah.
Now you actually see there's a difference here between, you're a boy and here's a man or women. Like, there's teaching you some of the stuff because it just shows that you didn't even understand that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it kind of goes back to when we talk about transgenderism, we're not just talking about male and female anymore. We're talking about a wide breadth of what we call genders. Now, in a lot of ways, we used to call these just personalities, but we've kind of changed that. But when you talk about imaginative play, some of that, you've got my son's in middle school, and so he goes to public middle school. He comes home and he's like, "Oh, so and so's a furry." I'm like, "What? I know what that is, right?" And I'm like, "So what do you do?" And he says, "Yeah, we just kind of ignore it. Just like, whatever, it is what it is. Maybe they'll grow out of it." Like, it's not a majority of a school, but they can't speak up against it really at all. And so now we're seeing people transition to things other than a biologically different sex. So when we talk about transgenderism, it's not just male to female, female to male, right?
Okay, right. There's some other things going on there. I like it.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. So no, I think it's a bending of trying to bend reality around us, and trying to make reality be shaped to what we desire. But
Mhm.
and now our culture is saying, well, we should allow people to bend reality. It's postmodernism in the flesh,
Yeah.
and it's going to snap back violently at some point.
Mhm.
And I don't mean like physical violence, but just
Right.
emotional. And so when we talked about psychology, playing into that, saying, oh, you can, this whole thing. I used to do youth ministry, and one of the common things that people say is, you can be whatever you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do.
Mm.
And I've told kids in youth ministry, you can't. You
Yes,
you
thank
can't.
you.
I'm sorry. You are 5'8", and run a 5.540. You're never going to play college football. It's just the way. You know what? But you've got other talents and gifts. Like,
Mhm.
you can't be whatever you want to be. But that bending of reality, when we find out that we can't bend reality anymore, that alone can be damaging, right?
Mhm.
So I love this. This is so good. And I'm glad you're not the only Debbie Downer in the room, because I say that to kids too, and I speak to them, whether they're high school, college. I'm like, guys, I'm sorry. People told you when you grew up, you can be whatever you want to be. Sorry, that's not true. It's a lie. You cannot be anything you want to be. And I've used some of the same examples that you use about athletics or whatever it might be. I'm like, there are limitations. Right.
Mhm.
So I think you're absolutely spot on to do that. And sometimes I feel like even when I speak on mental health, I've got to be the realist in the room. Life
Mm,
is going to stink. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're depressed. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're a victim. It just means life stinks and it's going to be hard and you're going to be sad and you're going to be happy. And then you're going to be sad again.
mm,
And then it's going to be happy. Like you just kind of got to bring reality into the delusion that we have an entitlement or a
mm,
right to be happy at all times, to be whatever we want to be at all times, and anything that gets in the way of that freedom, including religion, including God, I should reject. Right? So
mm.
Mhm.
you have these larger
Yeah.
things here. So well done on putting that reality dose and that reality check
Yeah.
in people. But
Mhm.
you mentioned the furries thing. Now this is an interesting one as well, right? Because this is one where I think the research is still kind of coming out and we're still learning about all this kind of stuff. I've talked with a psychiatrist about it, and one of the things I said to him was, I said, it seems to me when you look at the transgender thing and you look at the furry thing, it seems like the commonality here is that we as a society don't want to be us anymore. We want to be
Mm,
something else because being us is painful. Being us is hard. Being us, we have mental health issues, we have whatever it might be going on. And so being us is not okay. So if I become this, I will then be happy. It is like part of our quest for happiness and joy. And so the furry thing is just another thing, right? Instead of saying I'm a girl who's going to now be a boy, it's I'm a girl who's now going to be a cat, right? And
Mhm.
we've got litter boxes in bathrooms and high schools. So that young girls, I was talking with one high school student, and she was saying, yeah, she went into the bathroom one day and a young girl was squatting over the litter box, and she just was like, I can't use the bathroom. She just turned around and walked out. She's like, I just can't go. I can't use it.
wow.
Mhm.
And so this is what we're seeing, right? We are seeing young people who are the most privileged, right? Because we live in the greatest civilization in terms of comfort that's
Mhm.
ever existed, right? When I'm hot, I have an AC to make me cool. When I'm cold, I have a furnace to make me hot. When I need clean water to drink, I stay in my house and can pick from multiple sources of which to get that clean
Yeah.
water that won't give me disease, right? Cholera or whatnot. If I wake up in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. and I need to use the bathroom, I don't have to go outside and go to an outhouse, and worry about something getting me and, an animal out there or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
we have food, so much food that we've got, that grocery stores have to, give food away to places, and restaurants are throwing food. I mean, we are so overabundantly blessed, and we are still so miserable.
Mm,
And it shows you can have all the things that life has to offer you and
Mhm.
still not find joy and satisfaction in it.
Yeah.
And so we find these other things then to say that these things must be what's going to make me happy. We're on this quest for happiness, for peace,
Yeah.
clarity. And so I
Mhm.
think that part of what we're seeing, the furry, is just another example of what we're
mm,
seeing in the trans community.
Yeah. I love how you bring up that even when someone can have everything, they can still be so miserable.
Mhm.
And then we also see people who have nothing who are filled with joy because they know the joy of the Lord and the peace that passes all understanding. And so really, even if you are super rich and have everything you could ever want and need, you'll be miserable unless you have the joy of the Lord, and then you can actually enjoy it properly, and you'll probably be supporting many 501c3 ministries in the process as well, so that's good for all of us. But yes, it really comes down to the joy of the Lord and the peace that passes understanding. And until one has that, you're never going to be happy, no matter what you have or what you transition into or anything else.
Yeah. I agree.
That's good.
Well, let's move on. One of the ways we can recognize signs in someone who might have the disposition towards this transgender ideology is to familiarize ourselves with what's called the Golden Four. So what is that, and why is it important?
Yeah. So I pegged that term, the Golden Four, because I feel like it's an important thing for all of us to realize, right? And I think this is one of the things that I really, I appreciate some of the stuff you said this in the beginning about how we as a church or Christians should respond. And I think, growing up in the 80s and 90s and just being disgusted, I think, with some of the way that the church has responded to people in the LGBT, that time was more LGBT community. And I think, there's a bit of this where it's easy as Christians to say to other people. And I think the Golden Four, I think, can help put things in perspective, that these are people that aren't just, trying to ruin your life and trying to, just act wild and crazy. Like, they generally are struggling with some other underlying issues. Right. So the Golden Four would be, they're the four mental health conditions that most people who identify as transgender would have. And that would be depression, anxiety, ADHD, and autism. So those four you'll find in the overwhelming majority of people who identify as trans or say that they are struggling with gender dysphoria. They will have at least one, if not two, of those four conditions. Just like you'll find somebody who is suicidal, you'll find depression and anxiety. I think it's anxiety as well, but definitely depression. So you'll find these commonalities within people that are struggling with certain things. So you've got somebody who's autistic, for example, right? And going through middle school and high school is hard for them because they're socially not able to respond to people the way some of their other classmates are. And that's hard, right? And so they struggle with these kind of things, and then they are, affirmed through social media, which, by the way, is one of the leading causes of depression and anxiety. So we already know that those studies have been out. But they go to social media and they're basically told the reason why you're not comfortable, the reason why you're not happy is because you're actually a, girl, you're actually a boy, depending on what it is, right? So people actually then begin to feel like the issue isn't I need to learn some social skills to help with my autism. The issue is I actually need to change my gender. I was born in the wrong body. And so that's where that's why they call it rapid onset, because it comes out of nowhere. But this condition of autism pre-existed the gender dysphoria. And so then they go and they start making the steps, which I'm sure we'll get into, towards transitioning. And that leads to all kind of things. But what happens is the reason why these Golden Four are important is because when the child first comes out to the parent then brings them to a therapist. Now, they may already be seeing a therapist because they've already got depression or anxiety or something like that. But they go to this therapist, and in one visit, maybe two, the therapist sends them off for puberty blockers to the endocrinologist. The problem is, though, that the therapist hasn't dealt with their depression. The problem is the therapist hasn't dealt with their anxiety. And so what we're finding with the detransitioners, those who go through the entire process of transitioning, only to get to the other side and realize they're still miserable, is what they'll say over and over again is nobody dealt with their depression. They're still depressed. They're still anxious. Yeah. Remember, that pre-existed the gender dysphoria. So it's not related to the gender dysphoria. It's related to whatever's going on in their life that led them to feel that way. And so that is why it's what's really important for us to pay attention to what's going on mentally, right? Once again, we're such a blessed culture, and yet we're more mentally ill than we've ever been. Right. And that's the underlying for a lot of this.
Yeah. Bringing up the autism perspective, it sounds like more and more we're finding out. So the percentage keeps creeping up of people who, especially teens, who have been diagnosed gender dysphoric or need to transition, that are actually autistic, and they just never knew it.
Mhm.
In fact, I remember hearing a story. I think it was a family in Washington. I can't remember if it's Washington or Oregon. But their child started being socially transitioned at school without the parents' knowledge, which is common. And then they took them did the same exact steps that you said. They took them to a psychologist. Psychologist referred them to the endocrinologist. They said, well, you can either transition your child, or we can take your child from you and transition them, because you are harming your child
Mhm.
by not allowing them to transition. So
Right, right, right.
yeah, and so then the family quietly in the middle of the night picked up and moved all of their stuff from Washington to Texas
Nice.
in one night, and went and saw an actual counselor and diagnosed autism. And now the child is living as their biological sex and having success. So it just goes to show, to me, I mean, that's anecdotal, and I get that.
It goes to show that everybody should move to red states. That's
We're gonna get.
We'll wait for the comment section on
Yeah,
that
there we
one.
go.
Right.
There we go. Great. The emails are flying in right
Yeah.
now. But to me, it goes to show that like you intimated the social contagion of it, and the autism part of it. We can't ignore
Yeah.
that. We can't ignore
Right.
that.
Yeah. So okay. So now you've opened up a really good discussion piece here.
Yeah.
Because I actually think, yeah, your story's anecdotal, but I actually don't think it's rare. So one of the things that, I'm often asked, what if my child is coming out as identifying as having gender dysphoria? What do I do? And actually what those parents did is actually like the right thing. And Abigail Schreier, I mean, and once again, Abigail Schreier, she's not Christian, she's Jewish, by blood. I don't know if she's a practicing Jew. So a lot of information I'm giving, well, pretty much all the information I'm giving you is not really coming from Christian sources. For the most part, it's all secular sources. But she'll tell you, like, it sounds drastic. Change their friend group, get them off social media, change the school if you have to, move if you have to, because it's really environmentally, there's a massive environmental causation here in terms of what is happening around you, especially with the young girls, because of the way the young girls relate to each other. That young girls really empathize and they take on each other's burdens and each other's pain. It's like when one girl cries, the next girl cries, oh, we're going to go through it with you, right? So that's why the girls transition in groups, really. And so there's a massive social, it's right, that's why they call it a social contagion. So social, environmental type connection here with what's happening. So you change up those friend groups and it makes drastic changes. So I think one of the examples that Abigail Schreier uses is a mother whose daughter came out as trans and she was like, what? Sends her off to grandma's house, like on a horse farm or something like that. I can't quite remember the story. Sends her off to, but it's a grandma's house for 3 months. All of a sudden, she's not trans anymore.
Yeah.
So this is actually quite common. Pull them out of those environment, put them out of the thing that is feeding their thoughts with things that are not true and things that are not reality. Whether it's their own friends who are dealing with the same struggles because they're also just going through puberty and it's hard and they don't like themselves and they've got acne and they're not as tall as they wanted or their hair changed or whatever. They don't look like her. She's prettier, whatever it might be. They're already struggling to like themselves in puberty. And so they're just kind of sharing all of this pain with each other as friends, as young girls do. So changing up that environment is going to be actually, I think, really key. And I think that's something that parents need to think about. Pull them out of school. I know one young lady I spoke with personally. She was struggling with her gender identity. Her mom pulled her out of public school and homeschooled her, put her on homeschool. She's good now. So these things are actually, it's more than a dodo. I think you're onto something there, Josh.
Well, let me add to that. Just in the last few days, the manifesto was released of the mass murderer who was a transgender. So she was so a biological woman. I think she was 22 years old, in early 20s anyway. Biological woman who wanted to be a man so badly. And one thing and so she went and she did a mass shooting at a Christian school in Nashville a little over a year ago now. They tried to keep the manifesto under wraps and not release it. Finally was released this last week. And one of the things that the shooter said was that my parents and others actually think that religion can change our nature. And, she was saying how foolish that was. And it seems to me that that scripture is clear that the manner in which we think can change us. I mean, Paul tells us to take our thoughts captive, 2 Corinthians 10:5, and warns us that bad thinking can take us captive in Colossians 2:8. And that if we continue to take our thoughts captive, then we will be transformed by the renewing of our minds, Romans 12:2. Now, what's interesting is that science seems to have caught up with what Paul was talking about 2,000 years ago. Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz from UCLA has a great book entitled "You Are Not Your Brain." Highly recommend it. And in this book, he realizes that the way people think, it's really hard to think against your nature, as it were. Really hard to do that, but you can. And wasn't writing as a Christian here. He was writing as a psychiatrist. He's saying, but talking about how you can do the hard work and he wasn't saying this language. This is biblical language that I'm going to impose on here, but basically saying that you can take your thoughts captive over time. It's like going to the gym, like going to the weight room. You go one time and do some curls, great. Did you do anything? It's not going to make a difference if you don't make it a habit. But if you make it a habit and you go 3 to 5 times a week, in 6 weeks, you're going to start to see a difference. In 6 months, everybody's going to be talking about this radical transformation that's happened to you physically. But Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz is talking about like, hey, you can take thoughts captive over time and transform your brain. Now, the cool thing here is your thoughts are immaterial. You can't touch them. You can touch brains. You can't weigh a thought, but you can weigh brains. So the thoughts, the way you think is different than your brain. And he's noting that thoughts come first and your brain structure comes second, or at least your brain structure will change. Your brain chemistry will change, and it follows the manner in which you choose to think. Now, this has been a big topic of my research as I've been talking about what it means to be a free thinker, and that we can think differently than how our brains might be wired, and we can actually choose to change our brains. Now, Alycia, you're talking about our friend groups and how we surround ourselves, and I think that's a huge part of it, because our friends and the people in which we surround ourselves, they're feeding into our lives and telling us how to think. But if we're careful to surround ourselves with the right people, I believe that helps us. They help us think properly. Now, again, this mass shooter said, my parents actually think that religion can change our natures. I think that her parents are right. What would you add to that?
Well, I mean, I think ultimately, I think one of the things that I think the failures of the church with a lot of moral issues actually is that we work hard to change the moral compass, moral decisions of people who are not followers of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, when I talk about this topic, I go right to Genesis 1 and I tell people, look, I go through all the trans stuff. I go through all the medical effects. I go through what happens with surgeries. I go through the whole shebang. And at the end, I'm like, God, help us. What do we do? And I go right to Genesis 1 and I say, it's almost as if God knew in 2024, 25, 26, whenever year, that we would struggle with knowing whether or not we were male or female.
Wow.
And so right in the beginning, he puts in a point of massive clarification when he talks about in Genesis chapter 1:27, how when he's talking about the image of God and all those things, but he talks about how male and female he created them. right? And that created is talking about shaping and forming when you look at the Hebrew for that, right? It's just, they were shaped, they were formed. In other words, it's a physical description of what we are. And what's ultimately happening with the trans conversation is, I feel this way, my body says this. Which one do I listen to? The people that say don't transition say listen to the body. The people that say transition say listen to the emotions and the feelings. So what do we do? Well, right from the very first chapter of the Bible, God helps to bring clarity to answer that question, right? There's so many questions we ask God, we're like, what's the answer? And you feel like you don't get it. This one he's answered for us. What makes you male or female is not the feelings. It's actually what you were shaped or formed as. It's a biological, physical description. And of course, that leads into all the intersex questions, which we can get into should we need to. But the point is, I think that scripture can help us.
Now, we're talking about ideological ammo being used to further ideologies or to combat them. So for that, pay attention to this conversation and tune into FreeThinking Ministries regularly. Also tune into Apologetics Inc. with Alycia Wood as well. But if you're like Dr. Stratton, you might also want physical ammo for hunting or quickfire competitions. Don't buy ammo from the big box ammo companies. Support a small business that shares your faith and your values. Meat Industries has been dedicated to bringing quality and affordable ammunition to the local consumer since 1977. Based in Wood River, Nebraska, you can be sure that Meat Industries provides both quality and ideologically conservative values. At Meat Industries, they live each day knowing that performance by design is not just a concept, but an attitude that they want to share with all who enjoy an outdoor lifestyle and who care about accuracy and precision in the products they provide for the shooting industry. Meat Industries is an independent, highly innovative machinery and ammunition manufacturer whose goal is to provide the shooting industry with quality products to hunt, to protect, and to perform at the highest level by embracing challenges, commanding respect, honoring those that do the job no matter what that job is, and observing all the golden rules. When we support one another, these values will be our legacy that echo through time. Visit Meat Industries today by going to meatammo.com. That's meadammo.com, and peruse their catalog today and make sure that you let them know that FreeThinking Ministries sent you.
So my overarching goal with anybody who is struggling with trans identity or even part of the LGBT community is never to try and transform somebody into what Genesis 1 says that they are, or form them into Christian morality. Because what I've discovered is that the Holy Spirit is much better at conviction and change than I am. So my ultimate goal with anybody is, because I know the truths are found in the scripture, and knowing what God has called every one of us to do as believers, is I want to help connect people with their creator. And if I can do that, then their creator will then help them to realize the truth of what is in there, the truth of who they are, the truth of their identity, the truth of their value, whatever that might be. And you see this with several of the people who, so like Jackie Hill Perry's and Rosaria Butterfield, women who identified as lesbians, were all into that world, and then they became a Christian. And they'll tell you what their feelings didn't necessarily change. But what they realized, that the truth and if God truly was who he says that he was, then they could submit themselves, their desires, to who he was, to what he says. Yeah. And so there is a submission to that. Now, some people that, maybe they'll become a Christian and those desires will completely go. Great. Some people, those desires are still there, but they're submitting them now to who they see as the moral authority, which is God and not them now. Before it was them, now it's God. And they submit to that. And now both of them are married to men. It's wonderful what God has done. And so I think that that's kind of what I'm always trying to do, is bring people, if I'm able to have the power, which I don't, but if I have the power to take a gay person, make them straight, I've really ultimately done nothing. They're just going to hell straight instead of going to hell gay.
Yeah.
What have I done? Right? That is not of any great infinite type value, eternal value. So my goal is always to help whoever they are, gay, straight, tall, short, trans, not trans, whatever they are, purple, orange, yellow, green, help them to connect to who their savior is and let him do the work of changing them into who they really should be.
Well, I love how you answered that question, because what the transgender shooter said was, my parents actually think that religion can change our nature. And you just said, no, it's our creator who can do that.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah. Well, and I think to go even further than that, it's our creator that can bring us into conformity with what he truly has created our nature to be.
Yeah.
It's not,
Right.
yeah, we are trying to change our nature. When we talk about so John 10:10, Jesus says, I've come so that you might have life and have it to the fullest. And in a lot of ways, as we talk about this, we see people trying to have life to the fullest without Christ. And so I love the way that you said that. I've often said that sometimes the issue with the church is that we pretend like, or not pretend, we act as if the sexual, especially the LGBT plus issues, are the only sin issues we have to resolve before we come to the cross.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
and so Frank Turek recently posted on X. We can't say tweeted out anymore, but he posted on X.
Oh,
Um,
I didn't know that.
yeah, I don't know. It's different. He posted on X, how do you share the gospel with a transgender person? And so my response is, you share the gospel. Like I'm no better than you are. You're no better than, we're all destined for the same place, but Jesus saved us. So I love the way that you answered that. And one of the reasons that I love what you're doing, you as I watch some of the things that you did, you take it from a secular point of view first, and then you kind of bring in, okay, as Christians, what do we do? And that's great. I spend a majority of my time seeking to equip the church. So I speak to the theological things first. So I kind of I will meet in the middle at some point.
That's great.
But one of the reasons for that is because I've seen arguments, and they're all pretty bad arguments, but they're arguments, I call it TikTok theology.
Because that is a thing. That is a thing.
It is a thing. And there are arguments made from scripture. So now we're introducing LGBT people to the gospel, and they say, oh yeah, I believe. And then they can find arguments that people are twisting scripture around, oh no, God is LGBTQ plus affirming. And so we need to do a good job of discipling after the fact, of saying, actually, that's bad theology. It's not going to give you life to the fullest, because you're trying to have an identity in Christ and your identity in your sexuality. And if I, as a heterosexual male, try to have my identity as a heterosexual male and my identity in Christ at the same time, I am going to be confused and frustrated, because I'm supposed to only have the identity in Christ, and then he can change my heart and my nature and my desires. So I really, really enjoyed what you had to say there. One of the things, though, that people will bring up is this idea of, you mentioned it, intersex, and we have to deal it in the theological terms too. So there's a way that I deal with it. So I'd love to have that conversation when people bring that up as either part of an argumentation or asking, well, how do you deal with this then? How do you deal with people who are born with XXY chromosomes, or two sets of genitalia and we're not sure, or ambiguous genitalia and we're not sure? Doesn't that show that that it isn't just male and female? How do you approach that topic?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a big question. I'm going to jump on that. I want to just say one thing on what you just said, though, because I think you raised a really good point about this idea that God is somehow LGBTQ affirming. So and part of the reason that, I do use, for when I do my talk, I think therefore I'm trans. The reason why I use secular sources is because, I'm trying to get away from this is Christians versus the trans community, right? And as an apologist, the more secular sources I can use, it's just, and this one's just too easy. It's just so easy. All the sources that are out there is just easy. I mean, I can quote Richard Dawkins to who's in agreement with me. Like that doesn't always happen, right? As an apologist. So, but this idea of LGBTQ affirming, and one of the things I like to tell people, I said, look, I want you to think about this. We'll put all the theology aside for a second, okay? And I want you to think. So you're telling me, what society has ever thrived when a certain percentage of them, pretty larger than they've ever had in their culture before, identify as same sex and so get into same-sex relationships and marriages. And the other, and another percentage are transitioning gender, and so now are becoming sterilized. So tell me, what culture, putting all religion aside, what culture is going to do well when that is how their future is being laid out?
Mm-hmm.
And I try and let people know, guys, you can use all the theological, twisting and changing that you want to do about, what happens in Sodom and Gomorrah, what Romans 1 means, and blah, blah, all these kind of things. But at the end of the day, you need to help me understand why God would call something good, so same-sex relationships, that leads to the end of the human race. At the end of the day, not even atheists are fully okay with same-sex relationships. Because if we all decided to be loving tomorrow, they'd find that's great. We all decide to be gracious tomorrow, that's great. If we all decide to be same-sex tomorrow, the atheist community would have a problem, actually. Because how are we going to survive as a people group? And that, so they're really only okay with same-sex relationships as long as there's enough heterosexual people keeping the population going, which there isn't, actually, by the way, because we've had population decline issues in America, right?
Yeah.
So total side note, I just wanted to say on that one thing that you said, it was such a good point that you made. Like, it doesn't even make sense, putting the theology aside, how God could affirm the end of the human race. But all that to say, so intersex, right? This is a big, big, big topic. It's, I'm an apologist. I'm not a biologist, and I had to become a biologist. I talked with doctor after doctor. I read research article, and medical article to trying to help understand what really is going on. And I think sometimes with intersex, what people assume when it comes to intersex is people assume intersex people are people that are half male, half female. Okay. And I just, let me say, I put an article on our website on intersex, apologetics.org, so that you can read this, because it's be much easier for me if I could draw you pictures. When I talk about this, I actually get a board and I draw it for people, because it's much easier to see that way. But I'll do the best that I can with words, but you also have the article for anybody who's listening to kind of go over it. But yeah, so intersex people actually are not. People are both male and female. Okay. We think that is this case, but that's not. That actually does not exist in humans at all. There's no situation at all where somebody's both male and female. Part of our confusion is because what we identify are the determining factors as to whether or not somebody's male or female. So maybe genitalia or maybe chromosomes really aren't the most accurate way to do that, to determine male or female. So the reason why is that chromosomes are we all learn in biology, females XX, males XY, right? Great. But that works for most mammals. That doesn't even work for all mammals, right? And then if you're going to go on to birds, right? A male bird is ZZ and a female bird is ZW. So they don't use XX and XY even at all. So how do you know which is male or female? Right? So the XXXY standard doesn't even fully apply to all mammals, and it doesn't even help when we cross species. So while that is mostly true for humans, that XX is female, XY is male, I guess you would say a way that is a bit more consistent across species is going to be to look at what's called your gametes. Do you produce egg, large gamete, or do you produce sperm, small gamete? And so regardless of your chromosomal makeup across species, you only produce one or the other of those. The exceptions are certain kinds of fish and barnacles, snails, and slugs, right? So there we are. None of which, some worms, certain types of worms, barnacles, snails, and slugs. So none of which is us, right? Some people raise the issue of fish, and they'll say, well, can't fish be both male and female? From what I've been able to gather, that's actually fish who actually change from one to the other. So maybe they are sperm producing and then they switch to egg producing, but they're never doing both at the same time.
And they can only change once. They can't go back. Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know. I didn't know that.
Clownfish. I did there's a nature documentary coming out that's saying transgender clownfish. They're not transgender. It's the fish transition from male to female for the propagation of the species, but they can only do it once. They can't go back. So, yeah.
So that's a great point. That's good to know. And so I didn't know that. So, and then there's also some talk about, is it some of the medical stuff that we put into the water line that's affecting fish and the animals and these kind of things. So who knows about all that?
We're gonna go Alex Jones on us. They're making the frogs gay. I don't know. That's
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry. Totally derailed.
No, that's fine. I mean, we'll find out in 10 years, if people aren't really not uncover, what are we putting into the water system here?
Yeah. I'm not calling you Alex Jones. Just want to be sure everyone. Yeah, that's right. It's a joke, people.
It's a joke.
Okay.
So the reason why we don't have any situation in humans where you can produce both egg and sperm is because it's the same organ that produces egg or sperm. So it's either going to be developmentally, what's called your primitive gonads, are either going to become ovaries for women and produce eggs, or they're going to become testes for men and produce sperm. So they are primitive. So they're just waiting to be told what to do in utero based off of, your chromosomal makeup and how things are going. And based off of that, it's going to become one or the other. Okay. So it's the same organ. So that's why it's like, if it's designed to produce eggs, that's what it's going to produce. It can't just up and produce sperm at the same time. So we have no situation where humans produce sperm and egg at the same time. Okay. So that's why intersex people are not people who are both male and female. Yes, there is situations of ambiguous genitalia. There are situations where their chromosomal makeup might be XXY, which is a condition called Klinefelter syndrome. And you're like, they got two X's, they're female. And it's like, actually, no, because that Y chromosome on the Y chromosome is something called the S or Y gene. And that thing changes everything. That's what makes that baby go male. And so as a result, once it's there, it's kicking off all the male processes. Now, somebody who is XXY, will struggle with certain kind of maybe like reduced facial hair and bone density issues, and even some like learning disabilities and things like that. But they are most definitely male. Why? Because of their chromosomes? No, but because they actually form testes and are producing little to no sperm, depending on the person, right? But the point is their body is going in the male pathway to produce sperm. So that's just a quick summation of what intersex is. Intersex basically are conditions where just like, certain babies are born and maybe they're missing a finger, or they're born with web feet, or they're born with maybe just really poor hearing. Guys, when you study these kind of embryology, I was blown away by the number of things, billions and billions of things that need to go right in the tiniest cell, like in cell division, and these kind of things on a super tiny level in order for us to get what we would consider typical person, which really, we all have our issues. None of us there's no ideal perfect person. We all have our issues. And for an intersex person, this is when maybe there's issues in the cell division, or there's other things that just don't go as they typically should when it comes to the reproductive area of their body. So their ears may be great, their eyes may be great, but the issue fell in for them in the reproductive area. And so they may have more ambiguous genitalia and the like.
I saw a meme, I think it was yesterday, and I don't know if it's too simplistic, but it basically said, if you have a Y, you're a guy. So you're saying that you could have the two X's, but it's the Y that makes the difference.
It's the Y that makes the difference. Yeah. And what is the condition? I got to think about that. There is a condition where I think there's an issue. Yeah. I forget what it is, but it is. Okay. It's Swyer syndrome. So basically there is an issue, I think, so your XY. And what I understand is that there is an issue with the way that the S or Y gene on that Y chromosome works. Maybe it's just defunct or something like that. And so as a result, so you have to understand, you kind of default female. The body forms along the female pathway when it gets about 7-8 week mark, and the delineation between gender or sex starts to kick in. If that Y chromosome is active and everything is good with it, that S or Y gene takes what's forming female and it moves it from the female pathway to the male pathway. The testosterone that's developed at that time also masculinizes the brain. So people talk about having a male or female brain. Actually, that's determined 7 or 8 weeks in utero. If your Y chromosome worked perfectly fine and your testes formed perfectly fine and they produce testosterone, then your brain was actually masculinized in utero. And so there are differences between the male and female brain in terms of pathways and neurons and all these kind of things. All that to say, there are times when the SRY gene, though, the body's forming on the female pathway, that Y gene kicks in to, at the 7-8 week mark, and that SRY gene, something may be wrong. And so it never actually converts that baby to the male pathway. And so the body continues to default to female and forms a female baby, but they are XY. So yes, that is called Swyer syndrome. And so as a result, they do form, external female genitalia and all of these kind of things. And they probably don't there's no ovaries, I believe, as well. So there are certain kind of issues, but they are considered female because they went along the female pathway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is biologically complex when we talk about the exceptions, right? So but exceptions don't change a rule. And especially in biology, like you said, if somebody's born with a certain amount of chromosomes, they'll be Downs. They'll have Down syndrome.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
That doesn't mean that I can then choose if I want to become Downs. It means that something went wrong there. Now, that doesn't mean they don't have the same amount of human dignity and importance. The fact that Iceland has basically slaughtered Down syndrome babies and called it a cure through abortion is a genocide that no one talks about. But so they have all of the personhood that a person deserves and the dignity that a person deserves, but it doesn't displace the rule put in place of what male and female or a healthy human body ought to look like scientifically. That's what I'm hearing you saying. Is that kind of a fair summation of where we're going?
Right.
Super helpful information, though. I learned a lot from what you just said. So it was great.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why, like an XY, someone with Swyer, while they don't have the ability to produce eggs, they actually form internal female genitalia. Not genitalia, organs. And so actually this person who's XY with an organ donor, an egg donor, or in vitro fertilization, all this kind of stuff, they can actually carry a baby. So you can be XY and actually carry a baby because they have, their uterus and all that stuff may very well be fully intact. So yeah, I mean, so this is the thing. Do we determine value off of all of the things in us working like we think they should? Is that really our inherent value? And goodness, I hope not, because I got all kind of issues. Yeah, maybe I don't have some of the physical issues that someone who's intersex has. Absolutely. But I don't know why I have these extremely long arms, and and large feet for my size that makes finding clothes just horrible, right? Like, why do I, like there's certain things that we just don't form exactly how we should, and I think we all have, these kind of things. So I just think that, yes, we need to be careful because, and I'm going to pull this off the top of my head because I don't fully remember, but with Down syndrome, people, they did a survey, I think in 2011, 2012, something like that, on Down syndrome people, and asked them, how, like, if they liked their, I think it was if they were happy with their lives. And I think it was 96% said they liked how they looked, and 99% say they were happy with their lives, something like that. 99%. And we are aborting them because we think they're not going to have a good quality life because they're not like me.
Yeah.
So they're not going to have a great life. Keep in mind, we're all mentally broken and ill and stressed. And, look at us. We're a mess as a culture. So we determine human value as humans, say they won't have a good quality of life. And so we abort them, only to have these studies come out and say that 99%, I believe it's 99%, it's either 99 or 96, are happy with their lives. And all I can think is, oh my Lord, we've aborted the happy ones.
Yeah.
And we're left with us.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we don't put human life in our hands, because we are not able to determine value. Same thing with people who were born with intersex. They didn't choose this. This is how their body formed. And in a world where so many things go wrong, we know stuff goes wrong with the development of our body. And so absolutely, this is why I love that our human value is never based off of what anybody thinks of us, right? But what our creator determines our value is.
One of my friends, good friend, he's got Down syndrome, and he's talk about being filled with joy.
Yes.
And he'll tell you that he loves his Down syndrome.
Yeah.
I taught him how to drive. I gave him 20 years ago. I was giving him driving lessons, and he got his driver's license. He lives in California now, in Southern California, and he surfs. I can't surf. I try to go when I'm in California. I'm horrible. I keep trying, but he's up there hanging 10, and he loves his life. And it just breaks my heart and makes my blood boil to think that people are, killing the happy ones. I've learned a lot from him, that's for sure. And he loves Jesus too. So.
Yeah. There you go. You see it?
But, well, Josh, why don't you ask the next question?
Okay. Yeah. So getting back onto some of the topics that we're talking about, as far as transgenderism goes, we could talk about intersex and stuff like that for a long time. I personally don't think it helps the argument of transgenderism, because what I've called it is it's a red herring. You're now pulling me away from the actual conversation to a different conversation. And so I tend not to have it, and say, we can talk about that if you want, but that's different than people who aren't born intersex and choosing transgenderism. So when we get back into that conversation, like we've said multiple times, as Christians, we want to love people well. We want to guide them in the truth of Christ. So as people who are trying to share the gospel, love people well, and then we're coming to contact with people who identify as male or female, and they weren't born that way, or identify even using pronouns like they and them, things of that nature, or neo pronouns. I saw a TikTok recently of a guy unironically saying that he goes by Fox and Fox Self, one of the furry types. Like that's his pronouns. Now, it's hard for me because I'm a sarcastic person, so sometimes I want to make jokes about things.
Yeah.
But the question becomes, when we're trying to have loving conversations and dialogue with people that insist on using pronouns, what is, and I promise this is not a gotcha question, I'm genuinely curious. What do you tell people as far as like pronoun hospitality? There's a wide array of opinions on the Christian arc that come with pronoun hospitality. What do you say?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer this with a thus saith Alycia, not a thus saith the Lord. Because I want to put that caveat in there that, some of this stuff as an apologist, I'm still working through, right? So, and so I want to put that in and kind of let this is where I am today. Okay. Willing to be wrong. This is where I've kind of landed. If you asked me last year, I might have the same answer, different answer. You asked me next week, I might change my answer altogether. So kind of here's where I am today as I'm sorting through this kind of thing. Because my ultimate goal with anybody is to try and help connect them to the Creator, help them to just dismantle just the really sometimes junky image we create of Christianity in the public, and somehow make it seem beautiful again, make it seem attractive, right? That's ultimately my goal, not compromising the gospel in any way, but in what way can I help people see the truth of it? Because I think what you actually want to be true, what you actually wish was true, actually is for many people. And so that's always my avenue I want to go to people. So if somebody comes up to me and they're a 13-year-old girl and a 14-year-old girl, and they're struggling with their gender, and they're transitioning to a man. So they're a trans man, right? Transition to a man. So a trans man, and they want me to call him he, but they're willing to talk to me about God. Fine. I'll call you he, because I think I've got a bigger goal that I want to get to at this point. If I start calling she, if it just shuts you down and makes you walk away, then I'm like, ugh. Right. So I'm like, so for the sake of this conversation, now I'm going to let you know where I'm at, and that's okay. I'll find a way to work it into the conversation somehow. I'll find a way to get it in there, and I'll say, hey, and I noticed that you transition, and Christianity even offers clarity to that, because it lets us know that our biology actually does matter, and that's what determines our male and female. So I may be, I'll work it in there so they'll know where I'm at. But if talking to them and calling them, he is somehow going to help this conversation go forward without another barrier that I've got to overcome, then that's probably where I'm going to go. Same in the same way that if I have a friend who's a lesbian and married to a woman and introduces me, say, hey, this is my wife. And I say, hi, nice to meet you. How are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And then the wife, let's say the wife walks off somewhere. And then I look around and I look to my friend, I would say, hey, where's your wife? Do I really think that that's her wife? No. But am I acknowledging? And honestly, if they come to me, they probably already know. I don't think that that's, but regardless, right? They already know kind of probably where I am. But regardless, I think I'm doing it as a cordiality in that moment, right? I'm not going to say, where's your person that the state of New York says is the one you're legally married to, but I really don't realize it, right? I'm not going to do that. I could use the name, and that's always a good way to substitute when it comes to pronouns and things like that. But I guess for me, I'm trying to look for ways in which I can get to what is really important here. Now, I will not do that with everybody. So I'm gonna say it's situational. So Dylan Mulvaney, who parades around as a girl and mocks womanhood, he is a he all day long. Like you are just insulting us. Now somebody can say, well, Alycia, are you trying to get to the heart of it? Yeah, that's fair. So that would be a hard one for me, because he is not at a level of respect as a young 13-year-old coming to me trying to figure out who she is. I think to me, it's a different situation. Yeah. So that's where I am today. I would say it's situational. There's times when I would, and there's times when I wouldn't. And that's kind of where I am on that. Willing to be wrong, where I am. Yeah.
So you would refer to Leah Thomas as a guy, as a he?
Probably, yes. Yeah, that's another situation where now. It depends, right? If Leah Thomas comes to me in this, I guess I would have to see at the time, because Leah Thomas is slightly different. I think Dylan Mulvaney is another level of, whereas I think, but Leah Thomas, I don't know. That's another one. I don't know. I'd have to see how that conversation went. I'd have to see how that conversation went. So yeah.
And also a difference between, say, Leah Thomas wanted to have a conversation with you, and how you would respect Leah Thomas while you're in the midst of that conversation, a personal conversation, versus us talking about him here. I would definitely call him here. He's a guy competing against girls.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. No. So Tim, as you say that, one of the things, I think this is a good conversation, because as Christians, there's a conscience issue here. Some people say you're participating in a lie. And I get that argument. But one of the ways I've kind of delineated it, delineated it in my own life is, so I wrote an article on FreeThinking Ministries website. You can find, it's called three different types of conversations and how to have them. Okay. And so I see a cultural conversation, a social conversation, and a personal conversation. And as far as transgenderism goes, I'm not going to break down the whole article. We can read it. You can read it if you want. But as transgenderism goes, if I break that into the three different conversations, if you're seeking to be a cultural icon and you're lifting yourself up as somebody to follow and somebody that is a cultural a cultural phenom, and you're making money and your name, and you're trying to be a part of that's something that changes the culture towards this ideology, I will not participate personally in the pronoun hospitality, because I think now I'm participating in a cultural conversation. Some people call this a culture war. I just call it a fight for truth in our cultural context. So I will not be compelled to use that pronoun or other pronouns. And so it doesn't matter how big your name is. If I'm going to talk about it in the cultural conversation, I'm not going to use your preferred pronouns or the pronouns you've chosen to assign to yourself, because I think it's important for people to see people stand up to that culturally. But as you said, in a social context, if I'm talking to a group of friends and there is somebody that we know of that identifies a certain way, there's some wiggle room there, because there might be a greater goal achieved, and I'm not seeking to placate anything, but I want to be able to point to truth without without unnecessary roadblocks. And so I might sacrifice some of that. And then in the personal conversation, that personal relationship, I think, is important to establish. So I might do that. Now, if somebody comes and says, "Hey, you need to refer to me as Fox and Fox Self," um, I
Yeah,
might
that
have
might be a bit.
yeah, I might have to say, "Okay, I'm just going to call you your name. You know, what's your name?" That
What's
way
your
we can
name?
both. That way we can both have a conversation.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way I've organized it in my mind. But I know that it's to me it's almost like a Romans 14 issue when we're talking about pronouns. And I know some people take a really hardline stance on that. But thanks for sharing where you're at right now, and I totally understand that. Tim, what do you think? And then you can take us to the next conversation piece.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time on college campuses and have had some crazy conversations with many people, especially a lot of people in the LGBTQ community. And I when I'm writing for the sake of truth, if I'm writing a blog, or if I'm trying to be, if I'm really just when I'm focused on the facts and the truth and getting truth out there, that's what I'm going to focus on. But I found a difference when I'm face to face with somebody who's hurting. I change my approach. A lot of people think I come off kind of harsh, maybe online, because I'm just boom. It's just truth and logic, and I say love also, but you're not loving if you're not truthful. Josh, you brought that up earlier.
Yeah.
So it's I say it's like if as a musician, I've got an amplifier and I'm going to turn the knob of I got the volume knob that I can turn up to 11. I can also turn up the love dial and the truth dial to 11. Everything's up to 11, but to do that when you're face to face with somebody, it's way different. And I imagine myself when I'm in a face to face conversation, even with an atheist, even if it's not regarding the LGBTQ stuff, I'm trying to hold their heart in my hand.
Yeah.
While I take their bad ideas and destroy those. Paul tells us to destroy every argument raised against the knowledge of God. And I take that approach. I destroy every lie. I'm going to destroy lies, but I want to hold their heart in their hands and try. I've had students say, well, how do you do that when you're talking to somebody? Because even tomorrow I'm leading a trip of teenagers to Santa Cruz, California, to have tough conversations that, apologetics based conversations with the goal of getting to the gospel. And, and we train them for over 6 weeks now on how to have these conversations. Now I'm going to go meet with them at the destination. I do this kind of thing all the time. And the question that so many young people ask me is, well, how do you do that? And I said, I don't even know how to tell you, or, how I can't tell you how to do it. I can just tell you what's in my mind. I hold their heart in my hands. I try to protect that while I destroy their bad ideas and their false beliefs. And those are two different things. We destroy their false beliefs. We destroy their arguments raised against the knowledge of God, and we love them.
I love it.
I often probably err on one side or the other, but that's the goal. That's what I try to do. So if I'm talking to somebody that says, hey, I want you to call me a she when I know that they're a biological male, I probably would in that conversation. But if I'm going to get up on stage and talk about the truth of the matter, I'm going to call Leah Thomas a male and refer to Leah Thomas as him. But if I'm talking to him over lunch, having a coffee, I might change that. Maybe I'm inconsistent. It's tough.
But I think it's good. But I think hopefully what people are seeing is that, sometimes these issues are tough, guys, and, as much theology as we all study and, as far along as we are in our journey, sometimes we're still just trying to wrestle through some of these things. And I think sometimes Christians oftentimes feel like they have to know right now, this is exactly the way, but I think God allows us to wrestle. Think about when we, with the first time you hear of a particular theological concept and you're like, what? That's crazy. And then you spend time months studying it, right? Or maybe a couple years, and maybe your position changes.
Yeah.
So sometimes we are in this process, and Lord allows us to walk through these processes to continue to refine, where we are, and to just, because the journey and the exploration is something we enjoy as well. So hopefully what people are realizing is that it's okay to say you're not quite sure with some of these things, and to say, Lord, I'm just hoping that in this moment I'm pleasing you, with the best intentions of my heart right now. And I love what you said, Tim, about holding their heart in your hand. I think if that was our mindset, that we hold people's hearts in our hand, we would do a whole lot less trash talking, because the church it's so easy for us to other people and to say whatever we want from a TV screen, or say whatever we want when we're in a conversation with somebody who this isn't their situation they're dealing with. But if that is your friend, if that is your child, it's very different. This is someone that you're close to and someone that you love. How can you hold their heart and at the same way also, like you said, bring forth the truth? I was talking with a friend of mine who was formerly married to a woman. She's a woman married to a woman. And as we talked about the gay, attending gay wedding thing. And one of the things she said to me, which I think does play a part here, is, she's now a Christian and she's married to a man and things are changed in her life. But one of the things she said to me, once again, this is her opinion. Somebody else will have a different opinion. But she goes, a Christian attending my wedding didn't mean that they were affirming what I was doing. She goes, we don't see it that way. She goes, you guys have this big theology of like marriage and all stuff. We don't think of it that way. It's like, just come and watch us get married. Like, it's much simpler to them. And so one of the things, and I'm not opening up the gay marriage, attending the wedding, I'm not trying to open up. What I'm just saying is, maybe we need to keep in mind that the person we're speaking with isn't exactly thinking how we are. That if we call them by this pronoun, they're thinking and affirming it. They may not be thinking that. And I think sometimes we just have to keep some of this in mind. And I think the situational thing is helpful, as we hold people's hearts in their hands and talk about truth. I love that analogy, Tim.
Yeah, that's
cool.
Great.
Well, I have one more question. So just again, last week I was actually I was a Star Wars nerd, but so I'm part of all these different Star Wars Facebook groups. But now it's just gone off the deep end, and every time I see something about Star Wars over the last week or so, I just type "Star Wars is dead," and and people are like, "Well, why are you even here?" And I said,
he's the Frederick Nietzsche of Star Wars fandom.
Right. They keep saying, why do you hate Star Wars? And I say, I love Star Wars. I'm mourning its death. And Disney murdered Star Wars. That's what I'm telling you. And so everybody, I mean, it's a big movement now. Most people are kind of thinking along these lines, but Disney is really pushing the LGBTQ agenda, and they've not been secret about it. And now they've incorporated it into Star Wars. But anyway, I got into a conversation with a drag queen
nice.
In one of these groups. And so this drag queen, just because I said Star Wars is dead, started calling me a hater, namely because I hate Star Wars. And I'm like, no, I don't hate Star Wars. I love Star Wars. I'm mourning its death. And anyway, one of my first interactions with a drag queen. So that kind of leads to this question. What do you think of the conflation of drag queen culture and transgenderism and queer ideology all in one big ball of wax kind of thing?
Yeah, I think there's multiple things going on. I think the reason why young people are transitioning is different than why adults transition. There's different reasons why young girls transition versus why adult males transition. So a lot of the adult, I think, queer stuff, I think that there's going to be multiple sources there, multiple things going on. Number one, I do think that there is a pedophilia type aspect to a lot of the adult male to female, so becoming trans women. And we've seen that because we've seen the Storybook Hour. We've seen, I've seen videos of, I don't know why parents do this, but they're bringing babies to like drag shows. Like I don't understand what a baby has, like, what does a baby does not even, they're not thinking at all in these ways. Why are we doing completely unage appropriate realities of the world to a baby? Like, I don't need to expose them to a lawnmower at 2 months old. They don't get these things. So I'm not sure why we're doing that, other than I think this is part of what's going on. So I do think the pedophilia, I remember seeing our pedophilia is playing a part. I remember seeing a video, and I think it was a rooftop in Australia, and there was a young boy, maybe 4, 5, 6. There's all these, I don't know if they were drag queens or a combination of different things, but they are, and they were just, or trans people, and they were just encouraging him in his really inappropriate dance. And so I do think that that there is a good reason to think that there's a pedophilia type aspect to this. I also think that Jordan Peterson said this, and I think that this I think might be something to this as well. But he says that there's a narcissist aspect. In other words, they think themselves as like the best possible man that there could be. And so they essentially say, therefore, I'm going to become the best female version that could be. And that's just a female version of me because I'm already the best man. So the best female is going to be a female version of me. And so there's this narcissistic aspect where they take on this female version, which is just like them because, and that is kind of the persona that they take on. Another thing is autogynephilia, where people get, sexually aroused by the idea of themselves as a woman and this kind of stuff. And, that's definitely playing a part into all of it. And I think, when you think about transitioning, and they find this with the young girls, when the young girls transition, they really don't take on boy characteristics. They're not lifting weights. They're not, all of a sudden like lovers of like the NFL, which I, by the way, am a huge NFL lover, but
Nice.
Getting back to the tomboyish, but they're not big sports lovers. They just what they're finding is they just don't want to be a girl. Okay. So there's this idea of they just don't want to be themselves. But when you see a lot of the adults transitioning, what you see is they become an over-sexualized, stereotypical idea of what a woman is, which is very interesting to me. It's long hair, it's nails, it's makeup, it's jewelry, it's high heels, it's massive breast implants, it's tight dresses, shaved legs. Like it's all stereotypical what defines what a woman should be from a cultural perspective. It's a definition of beauty from a cultural perspective. And one of the things that is so problematic to me about that is, and this is why I think the feminist movement is also having issues with it, is the feminist movement is like, dude, we just spent the last 60 years trying to say that women are more than just physical sexual objects, only for you to reverse all that and turn it back into that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, so in other words, if I don't wear makeup, which I don't, does that mean I'm not a girl? If I don't wear jewelry one day, does that mean I'm not feminine? If I cut my hair short, does that mean I'm no longer female? Like, what are we saying about what being a woman is, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think when you see some of the queer and transgenderism in adults, it's going to be very different, I think, than what's happening in younger age people who are struggling with mental health things and just are trying to escape being who they are and all of these kind of things. So I think there's multiple aspects happening there that we really need to keep in mind. I'm not really sure much about the female to male, kind of what some of the reasons are. I'm still kind of looking into that, trying to see what is going on with women, adult women that think that, that transition older. But I do think that what's happening in the adult world is extremely, extremely negative. And not sure why Disney has jumped on this bandwagon other than, well, I shouldn't say I'm not sure. I'm not surprised, I really should say, because it's kind of where the culture is. And everybody wants to say love is love. And we want to be affirming and these kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Love is love, a nonsensical tautology that means nothing. It means that I get to define what love is to myself.
And we actually don't mean love is love because you're not going to let me love your husband. So
Yep. I like to say, well, love is love, but love is not sex. We should all love each other, but they should only have sex with one person.
That's great. I like that.
And that leads me into something that I thought of. I think one of the biggest issues, not just with the sexual revolution, but it does kind of come from that. And I think it stems from some of this with transgender ideology, is that we have bought into this idea that our sexual desires or sexual proclivities are the most important thing about us. Mm-hmm. That those are the things that define us as people. And so if we can't identify a certain way sexually, then you're removing who I am as a person.
Right.
And what a sad way to view personhood. My sexual attraction isn't who I am. It's something that I
Exactly.
do. It's something that informs some of my desires in my heart, but it's not who I am. And Scripture offers something different. One of the things with drag queen stuff that I was very confused when it started being conflated with like the LGBT um,
Mhm.
community, because it always seemed like just some sort of um, kinky entertainment thing
Yeah.
that wasn't an identity. Like people who did drag queen weren't like, well, I am the name, my stage name, like that's who I am really. And it was just kind of like a shameful sexual aberration, and now it's been made almost the face of this cultural movement, like drag queen story hour. And part of me
Yeah.
thinks it's a way to get kids to get used to seeing people
Yeah.
who aren't their born gender dressing a certain way and
Mhm.
normalize it.
Yeah.
There's just statistically not enough transgender people that have gone through all the transitions to be able to normalize it from person to person. So we can co opt this sexually aberrant thing and use it to normalize that. And so they go, oh, it's not sexual. It's not it's not sexualizing children. No, you're trying to normalize that men can dress as women and it's okay. And
Mhm.
that is sexualizing kids.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of what's going on. I think you bringing out the pedophilic impulses of it. I don't know why so many people are denying that, but it just seems like it is the case. Why, as a drag queen, are you okay with dancing in front of a 4-year-old?
Right.
Hmm.
Like, like, like that's a red flag to me. Oh yeah, bring the kids. Like, oh boy, that's you know, any person with their soul be like, I'm doing this. I understand it's sexually suggestive. Please don't bring your kids.
Sure.
Like, okay. So I think there's definitely a part of that. But one of the things that I don't quite understand, and Alycia, maybe you can speak to this. Maybe you can't. I don't know. But I would so there's this big uproar, and rightfully so in a lot of ways, about like blackface, right? White people putting on blackface. And I see drag queen stuff as women face. It's
Oh, interesting.
this it's this caricature of what a woman is. It's completely degrading,
Hmm.
devaluing, dehumanizing, and we're elevating it. Why not a cultural pushback to woman face?
Nice.
Because
It's a great point.
because these men, you are part of the problem of sexualizing women. I mean, that's like all women have these giant breasts and big booties and dress in these sexually suggestive ways, and you're saying this is what a woman should be. Um, have you thought of it in that way? Why do you think more women aren't offended, or maybe they are and they're afraid to say something? I don't know. I'm a man, obviously, so uh, as we've had this whole conversation, so I know that's putting you on the spot. So maybe you don't have thoughts on that, but it just kind of occurred to me.
No, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think this is why the feminist movement does have a massive problem with what's happening. I think a lot of women actually have a problem. I think this is why, Dylan Mulvaney is
Mm,
problematic for a lot of people, because it's like, so he has a song called Days
yeah,
of Girlhood. Have you heard that?
I have. It's awful.
Okay. So Tim, let me pollute your mind, because I
All
apparently
right.
haven't polluted all your minds enough, right? So let me read you part of one of the verses about what it means to be a girl, like the days of girlhood. He says, Monday, can't get out of bed. Tuesday morning, pick up meds. Wednesday, retail therapy, cash or credit. I say yes. Thursday, had a walk of shame, didn't even know his name. Weekends are for kissing friends. Friday night, I'll overspend. Saturday, we flirt for drinks, playing wingman to our twinks. Sunday, the Twilight soundtrack cues my breakdown in the bath.
Hmm.
Oof.
So that's what he's saying about who I am. I recognize that both of you have never had experience of being a girl, and that's fine. But that's what he's saying about me. That's how I spend Monday. I can't get out of bed. And Tuesday morning, I got to go get my meds. And Wednesday, I've got to go shopping because that's my
Mm,
therapy.
Yeah.
Like, it's like that's why I'm saying. So what they do is they take on stereotypical womanhood. So in other words, what a woman can't be is someone who's financially responsible, who is completely healthy and doesn't have mental health issues, who actually does know the name of the person she was with last night because she was married to him.
Yeah.
Right? So he's essentially saying that that isn't what a woman is.
Mm.
And so I think women are upset. I think they find it extremely problematic. Like, who are you? It's like me saying, well, I can tell you what a Chinese person is.
Mm.
I know what it feels like. I know what they do. I know what they do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Yeah.
Like, I've never been Chinese, right? I couldn't tell you what it's like to be a Sudanese person. So I think people do. I think women are speaking up, and they do have issues with it. And so I do see more and more of that happening. Because I think it's ridiculous. And this is why I find him, like, he's so, like, degrading, I think. Because he basically parades around in pink and makes us look like the stereotypical, what, not my phrase, is what, the phrase the culture uses, these stereotypical dumb, like, ditzy blondes type thing. And we've even pulled away from that. Why is it that blondes have to be ditzy or dumb? Right? We've even tried to pull away from that, but you have that stereotype. That's what he's trying to do, parade around. And it's just like, I've been a woman for a long time. I've never acted like that. So does that mean I'm not a woman? So I think it's problematic.
And one could argue it's actually more difficult for me to know what it's like to be a woman than it is for me to know what it's like to be a Sudanese person, a Sudanese man. Or I could go live in Sudan and be a Sudanese and become a citizen and become a Sudanese.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to have the same skin color. I'm not going to have the same, but I could learn some of that. I could never live as a woman. I don't know what it's like. So it's even more, I think it's the most impossible thing there is to think that you know what it's like. And so that's why he has to reach towards these stereotypes and really demeaning. I think it's just demeaning. And you mentioned, like, J.K. Rowling, who is in no sense a Christian or a conservative at all.
No.
Has been one of the most outspoken against this movement, and she has been raked through the coals. And I think maybe fear is part of that, for just the regular everyday woman who just wants to go about her own life. Because I find fear in myself, even having this conversation. It's like, oh well, we're opening up this bag again. It's just one of those things. So I appreciate you, Alycia, for what you do. The fact that you love the Lord, you want to speak truth, and thank you for joining us in this conversation. It's been really enlightening for me. I've learned a lot, and I hope our viewers have as well. Tim, you got anything finalizing?
Well, I just, Alycia, I know you take apologetics very seriously, and this is just one small aspect of what you've found on your plate, something that God has given you an opportunity to talk about. But what other aspects and topics regarding apologetics and theology and philosophy do you like to discuss?
Yeah, fair. Because this is definitely not, I mean, trust me, when you go to apologetic school, you go to seminary to be a pastor. What you don't take is a class on how to know if you're male or female.
Right.
Like, that never has made that into the curriculum.
Yeah.
As apologists, you never think, this is what am I going to be dealing with that?
Right.
And here we are, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So I think a lot of the other ones that are interesting, I think, to me, it really depends. It changes all the time because I'm such a generalist that I just kind of bounce around with the culture. I've done a lot on the mental health stuff lately, trying to sort through why it is that we are so unhappy, and what has gone wrong in the in the therapy community, really the psychology, psychiatrist community. Time magazine has written an article, Therapy Won't Save Us. They've written on it. Abigail Shire's new book, Bad Therapies, on it. So just looking at, Jordan Peterson is, always and anytime he, well, when he first pushed back against the gender thing, you see what Canada did to him, right?
Yeah, right.
So, I think, but he's willing just to be bold and just continue to say, and so he's raised some issues going on. So I've spent some time looking at the mental health stuff. So I do speak on that a lot, actually, because even on university campuses, because these are students who are not well. And what hope does Christianity have for somebody who's struggling through some of these things? And I talk a little bit even about the garden. And, when Jesus was going through such extreme duress, he talked to his friends. He asked God, he told somebody, this is what's going on. He was honest about, I am so like stressed to the point of death. Like he was not trying to hide it. He was honest about where he was at, told his friends, begged God to take it away, and God didn't. Right?
Yeah.
He won't always take away our pain. He does let us go through these things in life.
Yeah.
Did send angels to comfort him, though, which is also another point.
Right,
so,
right.
I'm looking to find ways to kind of, help people through some of that process. I do a lot on atheism. I challenge one of the arguments that atheists put forward, that they don't need evidence, which I think is so ludicrous to me.
Yeah.
Because the criticism of Christians is that they are not evidence-based. It's all fairy tales and faith
Right.
is believing in what you know ain't so, and it's faith, it's belief without evidence. And I'm like, okay, so what's your evidence? And like, we don't have any. I'm like, what?
Yeah. We're not making a claim.
Huh?
Yeah.
They say we're not making a claim.
They say we're not making a claim.
It's a lack of belief.
Exactly.
Is that a claim?
And so I challenge that. I say the only people who don't need evidence are the agnostic who say, I don't know. The minute you leave I don't know land and go to any position, you need to defend where you're at. So I try and challenge that. I think the starting point isn't I believe in God and I've moved to I don't believe, I don't think the starting point is I don't believe there's a God. Like there is no God. And then the Christians move from that starting point, so they have to provide the evidence. I think the starting point is we don't know what's true. And anybody who leaves there has to provide evidence. So I deal with atheism a lot. Deal with really just reasons why Christianity. And so actually the question I asked at EPS was kind of dealing with one of the things that I think is actually one of the best evidences for the Christian God versus other religious gods, is that I think in Christianity, you have a God who demonstrates love in the greatest possible way. And that's important because if God doesn't demonstrate love in the greatest possible way, which Jesus said the greatest way to show love is self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
And if you have a God who doesn't self-sacrifice, that he's not showing love in the greatest possible way. And that's problematic because that means if I give my life for you, Josh, or give my life for you, Tim, I've just done a greater love than my God will ever do.
Wow.
Good. That's
so
good.
If God doesn't self-sacrifice, then I can outdo him in love. And that's the question I was trying to get at EPS. If God, if Jesus isn't divine, boy, I can give my life for anybody and do a greater love than God. How can he's good? How is he good?
Yeah.
And so I use that with Islam, and some of the other challenges. Allah is loving, but he doesn't show it.
Yeah.
And yet you're giving your life for him and doing a greater love for him than he will ever do for you. How is he then good? How is he then great?
Wow.
So I deal with a whole range of stuff, cancel culture and all these kind of things. So as the culture goes, so do I.
Yeah. Well, we'd love to have you back on the show sometime to talk about these other issues. If you're willing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. I would love to. Absolutely.
And how can, if people want to have you on their YouTube channel or to book you to come speak at their church or local university, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah. So a couple ways. I am on the Twitterverse. I do still call it the Twitterverse because I'm afraid if I say X, people think I'm talking about a porn site. So
right. Yeah. But my wife saw my Twitter app when they first changed to X.
Yeah.
She was like, what's this?
Yes.
Like, open it. You'll see what.
Right. That's why I won't update Twitter. I've not updated Twitter in like 2 years.
No
way. I have the old icon and I don't want it to be the X.
That's awesome. Come on.
That's hilarious.
Come on, Elon. Help us out here.
Seriously. So you can find me on Twitter, Alycia Wood 88. That's an easy way to message me. You can find me there. I'm not on Instagram because it probably wouldn't be good for my mental health, and I'm not on TikTok because it probably wouldn't be good for my security. So, Facebook is the other way. I do have a public page. Just message me through the public page. That's an easy way to do it as well. Not the personal page. Do the public page, and I'll get that message. And you can also just email us at apologetics.org. Just go to our website and there's a contact form. You can fill out the contact form and just email us at apologetics.org and people reach out to us that way. So there's plenty of ways. And even on our website, we got lots of articles if people want to, check out some of the articles that we have on resurrection and just all kind of things in life. So feel free to check out our articles and podcasts and videos and things like that we have at Apologetics Inc. and apologetics.org.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Follow all things apologetics.org. Follow Alycia on Twitter. It's X now. We have to be okay with it. It's just what it is. And find her on Facebook. Thank you so much for just this conversation has been edifying. I hope people watching it feel more prepared now to enter into a world this in Pride Month that can be very frustrating and disheartening. So hopefully this gives people some tools, and also kind of helps you realize you're not crazy. Maybe if you're watching it to say, oh, okay, people are still looking at truth. So thank you for joining us.
No, thank you. And just as a final comment, just what I would love for the church to do is to be better at responding to non-believers as Christ would. When you look through the Gospels, the people who he rebuked were the religious people, because you guys have a set standard. He never rebuked the people who weren't Jews or weren't followers, and so he had a whole totally different disposition to them. And I think we need to do that as well. I think we need to follow that example. And it's easy for us to other somebody who then isn't our struggle. But what we need to remember is you are operating on this side of the cross as a believer. In other words, if it wasn't for the Holy Spirit in your life, wasn't for Jesus in your life, wasn't for the Father in your life, you could be them. Don't fool yourself. That could be your story. You could be just as confused about your gender, just as confused about your sexuality, just as confused about who to love, just as confused about moral right or wrong. It is only because of what the Lord has done in your life that you have clarity. So remember that if it wasn't for who God is, that could be your story. And if you think about that they are just like you, maybe then you can be able to see people through the eyes of God and communicate better in that way as lost people who just need to find their way home. And in so doing, their lives will be transformed, and they will truly know the reason for existence, and they'll have clarity about so much of the stuff that they're dealing with. So my final message to those listening is, let's represent Christ well. We did a horrible job, I feel, in the 80s and 90s of how we treated the LGBT community. It was shameful, it was embarrassing, it was humiliating. Can we get it right for once? Because the culture is fighting against the transgender movement. They are fighting it. They're actually in your lane on this one. Let them continue to fight it. And when the transgender community gets beat down by the culture, I want them to think, for once, I know the Christians don't agree with me either, but I know that they will love me. And let that be our story, guys, that we for once get this one right.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. And I've said for a couple of years now, the church has an opportunity if only they'll take it.
Yes.
Because the detransition movement has started and it will only continue. There's been a ton of teens that were not in their right minds that the world lied to.
Yes.
And so are we prepared to bring in a bunch of people who have been hurt, broken, and might look and act and sound a lot different?
Exactly.
To disciple them. So
yes.
I really, really, really appreciate that. I want to close with this. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good morals. And we've had good company here today. So it helps us to guide our conversation and our discipleship of people who we want to love the Lord. We don't want them to just detransition. We want them to know who Jesus is.
Yes.
That's the goal. And that's why FreeThinking Ministries exists. And that's why apologetics.org exists. So thank you and for joining us. And as we always say on FreeThinking Ministries, stay reasonable.